All right, we are talking about how politics and the Olympics are sort of meeting right now when it comes to the question of these anti-gay laws in Russia and the upcoming Olympic Games in next February in Sochi, and what the response from the rest of the world should be to this. We are talking with former Clinton administration official Richard Socarides, former Republican Congressman Tom Davis of Virginia, Rashad Robinson of colorofchange.org, and Julia Yaffe of the New Republic magazine. So the Olympics start, a few months from now in Sochi, 2014 Winter Games. And this whole question of what the response of the United States and the international community should be to the anti-gay laws in Russia, it reminded me, I'll set up Obama's press conference on Friday, first by playing 33 years ago in January 1980. This was just after the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan. The Summer Games that year were scheduled for Moscow, and the President of the United States was asked what the response should be when it came to the Olympics. This was Jimmy Carter in January 1980.
Mr. President, assuming the Soviets do not pull out of Afghanistan anytime soon, do you favor the U.S. participating in the Moscow Olympics? And if not, what are the alternatives?
No, neither I nor the American people would support the sending of an American team to Moscow with Soviet invasion troops in Afghanistan. I've sent a message today to the United States Olympic Committee spelling out my own position that unless the Soviets withdraw their troops within a month from Afghanistan, that the Olympic Games be moved from Moscow to an alternate site or multiple sites, or postponed or canceled.
And the United States and a lot of countries around the world did boycott the 1980 Summer Games. In response, the Soviet Union and the sort of the Eastern Bloc nations in 1984 boycotted the Olympics in Los Angeles. In response to that, Ted Turner started something called the Goodwill Games, and that took place in 1986 in Moscow. A little bit of international competition history from the 1980s. But President Obama at his press conference on Friday was asked basically the same question. In light of the anti-gay laws in Russia, what about the United States and the Olympics? And this is what he had to say.
I do not think it's appropriate to boycott the Olympics. We've got a bunch of Americans out there who are training hard, who are doing everything they can to succeed. Nobody's more offended than me by some of the anti-gay and lesbian legislation that you've been seeing in Russia. And one of the things I'm really looking forward to is maybe some gay and lesbian athletes bringing home the gold or silver or bronze, which I think would go a long way in rejecting the kind of attitudes that we're seeing there.
So, Rashad, I wonder what you think the appropriate response here is. I've heard the idea of the United States should boycott, other countries should boycott, the International Olympic Committee should move the games out of Russia and move them to like Vancouver, where they were held in 2010. You have the president there basically saying, hey, let's hope some gay athletes win medals over there and really kind of show it to the Russians. What do you think the right response is?
I think there's three quick points here. All Out has a petition of over 300,000 people around the world that's pushing the IOC to really clarify and force Russia to clarify its position so that, not just the athletes, but folks from around the world who go to Russia are able to be safe and able to be open in who they are. On two other points, the history of not just gay rights in this country, but around the world has been a history of visibility, people being open and counted and enlisted allies. And there's no greater sort of international moment than the Olympics for people around the world to go there and lend their support to the LGBT community, to the Russian LGBT network and other folks in Russia on the ground. And then the final point is really about sports in general. From Jesse Owens to Jackie Robinson to Billie Jean King, we have seen sports being a place where we can have deep and honest conversations about who we want to be and being our best selves. And hopefully this Olympics gives us the opportunity for folks around the world to go there and really raise their voice for equality.
You want the games to continue in Sochi. You want the United States to be there, the rest of the world to be there.
And I hopefully people will be carrying flags of support and standing up in support of equal rights and human rights.
And that we should say, you asked about Russia clarifying what exactly is going to happen to any gay athletes or any supporters of gay athletes. We've had conflicting statements here from the Russian sports minister. I think a week or two ago, he said that no one is forbidding an athlete with non-traditional sexual orientation from coming to Sochi, but if he goes onto the streets and starts propagandizing it, then of course he will be held accountable. And that just creates a huge, well, what exactly does that mean with propaganda? That could mean almost anything. And then, that created a backlash. So the response, again, from the sports minister, this was just this week, he says, Russia has a constitution that guarantees to all citizens rights for the private life and privacy. Rest assured that all the athletes and all the sports organizations should be relaxed. Richard, does that relax you hearing this from the Russian sports minister?
I think if anything, it puts people on high alert, right? Because you got different people saying different things, and they're trying to intentionally keep it a very gray area. But listen, you said in one of the last segments, this story is just getting started. This is going to be a huge international story. It is probably going to be the biggest international gay rights story ever. We are at a new, a lot of this originates in the West, and here in the West, we are at a new moment in gay rights. The gay rights movement in this country is emboldened. They've been emboldened by a Supreme Court who earlier this summer said that gays and lesbians are entitled to dignity in this country, and the gay rights movement is really on a roll, and this is going to be a huge issue. It's going to be a huge issue for NBC Universal, for this network. It's going to be a huge issue for everybody else who's connected to or sponsors the Olympics. There's already a McDonald's. McDonald's is one of the big sponsors. There's already a fake McDonald's ad going around where they have the opening. They've taken the opening of a McDonald's ad which says, we're happy to be in Sochi, and they've spliced into it pictures of these gay Russian youths being beaten and abused on the street. Videotape that is widely available, and this idea that we can have this celebration of the Olympics and celebration of our athletes while real Russian citizens are being beaten and harassed. I think that what Rashad, I agree with what Rashad says, and I want our athletes to go and compete, and I want us and other countries that support gay and lesbian civil rights to show the rest of the world the way to do it. But I also think that we have to have some focus on what is actually happening to gay people in Russia. And they are being beaten and harassed and sometimes killed in an environment which promotes this. The government is promoting this. So we have to also listen to them.
Well, Julia, what do you think how do you think the Russian government is going to play this then when it comes to the Olympics? Do you think that they would actually go forward with arresting and maybe with trying to enforce any of these laws, or also do you think there'd be an effect where they're a little bit more sensitive to doing anything domestically outside of Sochi that attracts international headlines in the next few months?
Yeah, so this is, you're seeing the Russian government in action. It's not a very strategic government. It's a very knee-jerk action. They passed this law, and now they're running up against hosting a major international sporting event, and they're like, what do we do with this? So the IOC actually has asked for written clarification, both so that they're clear on what this law means and how it applies to athletes that are going to be competing in Sochi, but also so that they have it in writing, so that if then there is a conflict, they can point to a written document and say, you promised this would or would not happen. The other thing is that if homosexuality is already seen as a nefarious import from the West, and it's seen as a global gay cabal is trying to wreak moral havoc on Russia. The global gay cabal getting up in arms and circulating videos and threatening to boycott the Olympics just reinforces this idea that Russia and its Russian Christian spirit is under attack from the morally bankrupt West. And I think, like you said, it doesn't really help. The more you press on Putin and you threaten to boycott the Olympics, this is a very personally important project for him, the more he's going to turn inwards and dig his heels in and say, you know what, then we were right. Look at this. You're trying to pressure us. You're trying to impose your moral values on us. We're going to stick to our guns.
Well,
and it doesn't help gay people in Russia at all.
Rashad, how do you break through that? And then when you look at trying to improve the lives and help the lives of gay people in Russia, if that's the reality, that any sort of intervention from the West, that an outcry, this is terrible, is interpreted the way Julia just said, how do you break through that and actually help?
I think it's really important that we support the activists and the community on the ground, the folks who have been doing this work for years in Russia. I have watched these issues play out, not just in Russia, but throughout Eastern Europe. I went to Serbia a number of years ago with the State Department to support LGBT activists there as they were working to have their pride. And folks have been working working for years, the same way people have been working in this country and in parts of this country for decades where it wasn't always safe and where religiosity got in the way of equality. And people have to continue to tell their stories, raise their voices, enlist allies. And the Olympics in this moment will create greater opportunity for that. And that's why I think it's so important that at the same time that we're pushing at the IOC, that we're also pushing and supporting the folks on the ground to be able to do the work that they need to do.
All right. One of those timings I'd love to otherwise, but I want to thank former Clinton administration official Richard Socarides, Rashad Robinson of Color of Change.org, and Julia Yaffe of the New Republic magazine. The issue's not going away. We will have you back. The most important election of 2013 has a little bit of everything.